Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning.
We are hopefully bringing an end to a little session of sermons that I've been doing with you on the Sermon on the Mount. So we are now in chapter 7, and God willing, this will allow us to complete. However, before we start, you need to understand there is a lot of information in chapter 7. So it is possible to head off in different directions. So try to keep us together. Let's read the first part of chapter 7. Judge not, chapter 7 of Matthew. Did I miss that? I do sometimes. Matthew 7, chapter 1. Judge not that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure that you use, it'll be measured back to you. This concept, this very first little bit, is something that we don't always get the full meaning of. Remember, Jesus is giving instructions to his church. Not just those who will become his church, but to those who will be his church throughout all ages, right to our present day. And he, throughout this entire discourse, has been highlighting things of importance. First, he started with chapter 5 by encouragement, telling them that they are going to receive the kingdom, that they are blessed, even though they don't have a lot to they are considered the meek, the weak, the ones who don't have power. They are told to yield. They are told to rely on God. They are given a prayer. They are helped to stand. In other words, if this was a meal, he started off with a starter just to get their appetite. Then he built to the main course, but now he's bringing out the final course. But unlike our meals, which is a nice wee dessert to settle off, this is the main meat of the word. This is the big steak. And so as we start this, we need to understand that this is for maturity. This is the good stuff. So when he's telling you not to judge, he's not just saying, I'm telling you don't do that. He's giving you an explanation, because he's not treating you like little children. He's teaching you like mature Christians. And he said, and here's why. If you judge, then you're going to end up receiving that exact same judgment against you. So, don't judge. So there's no measure against you to judge you on. In other words, it's more to your benefit to not judge people. And remember, he's talking people. He's not talking about the world. He's not talking about anything else. Because you're not in the world. You're separated from the world. We've already covered that in the first 2 chapters. So he wants you to understand that this judgment he's talking about is between you and your brothers and sisters. You also can't judge God, because that would be a bit stupid. I mean, could you imagine a 2-year-old crossly criticizing its parent? We see it, but we also know that the child doesn't fully understand the concepts. And why? What do you mean I'm not getting that? It's such a shock for it. But we are like that too. We're not to judge. And we have to be very careful, because it's a natural tendency. Our immediate thing is to hold ourselves up, look at the way another person's doing something, and say, I wouldn't do it like that. Have you ever done that? I wouldn't do it like that. You've made a judgment. It's as simple as that. So when Jesus is standing before you at some time in the future, and he says, I wouldn't do it like that. You'll know where he got it out of. That judgment was given because that's what you would have said. So be careful with how you speak, what you say, because it will be recorded against you. Not imaginary, for real. God takes note. And he wants you to understand that. He now shifts slightly. Now this is a beautiful little shift. You see, when Jesus is talking to people, he realizes we're as thick as two short planks. He does. He knows this. He also knows that some people will learn when they hear things. Others will need to have a demonstration as to how it works. I mean, you put it there, right? But others need a picture drew. And the vast majority of us always need a picture. I have a beautiful picture I have here today. It has absolutely nothing to do with the sermon, but I just wanted to say, doesn't it look well? We meet in a nursery setting, so one of the teachers has prepared this for us many, many years ago. But that's sidetracking. In verse 3 of chapter 7, Jesus is going to draw us a little picture. And that little picture is a little person talking to another person and saying, you have a wee speck in your eye. And when the person looks up with the speck, he sees that the person telling him this has got a plank stuck in his eye. We've all seen these wee pictures of this from different times, as it's always been a visual image. The question is, what is Jesus actually telling us with this? Let's read it through first, see how we understand it. And why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider that you might have a plank in your own eye? Or, how could you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, but you've still got that plank in your own eye? Hypocrite. First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So, there's a lovely little picture, isn't it? But what does it mean? Well, first of all, we're back into this judgment a bit. In this case, we've spotted something that somebody's doing wrong in church. You know? They're just not right. You don't do your tie like that, no. Little things. But it also could be things that they believe or things that they understand, which you see differently. Now, here's where we hit the problem. Jesus is saying that in a case like this, where you're going to remove a speck, a small problem that's causing someone difficulty focusing. And remember, that's all a speck does. You get a wee speck in your eye, your eye starts watering, you can't focus, you can't quite get it, somebody else with good sight comes in, little hanky, out it comes. And you're back right as rain within 5 minutes. We all know that, we've all experienced that. But if the person has a plank, we also know they'd be blind. That's the first part. So we know that God's not telling us this is a real plank. This is symbolism. Okay? So what's a plank? If I stick, hang on, I don't have a plank. Forgot one. Oh, what do you do? If I stick my hands up like that there, right? And I look around the room, I see the back of my hands. I see around the sides of the room, but I don't see the back of my hands. So if I'm talking to you and say, I'm going to do something for you, right? And I'm going to come up, look close and look straight into your eye, all I'm seeing is your ears. Are you with me? I can't see them because my plank's in the way. And that's what a plank does. It's something that is in your way, which is concentrating your focus from what is real, from what's really happening. Now, from a spiritual standpoint, that could be anything. I'm going to give you one example. There's loads, but I'm going to give you one example. In the church in Galatia, I think it was, the Galatians were having this problem. They ran into a small difficulty with the law. And they began to be persuaded that it might be more beneficial to them to become Jewish converts before they could be truly Christian. Now, I've always been fascinated by how this would have come about. And I want to tell you a little bit of background, not about Galatia or the Gentile church in general. Well, it will be in general, but not in particular. They lived under the Roman rule. Now, the Roman peace or pact was very simple. You can do whatever you like, providing you let everybody else alone and they can do whatever they like. So religious freedom is allowed and permitted. That's the first bit. That's the Roman rule. The second bit is, in Rome, you must acknowledge the emperor is in total, complete, and absolute charge. He alone is the one that you should admire, honor, and praise. So he is given the status of a god. And you must make your agreement to this. Now, Rome itself ran into a problem in this because they met a group of people down in the Middle East. They're called the Israelites. And they not only objected, but their law didn't permit it. And so they had to make a little concession. And all of the above that we've just said, unless you're Jewish, in which case the emperor bit doesn't apply. Okay? You don't have to make the oath. Now, you just happen to be a Galatian who has come to know Christ through the teachings of the church. But you're a Gentile. Now, here's your first problem. The people teaching you have come from a possible Jewish background. They are not subject to this rule about the emperor. And remember, it is strictly needs to be adhered to. So you have a wee problem. And your wee problem is you, the Gentile, suddenly find yourself faced with a situation where you cannot make that oath to Caesar, but you're not covered by the concession in that you're not a Jew, but you're a Christian. Now, in some provinces, the way it was looked upon was very simple. Well, it's a Jewish cult, isn't it? In which case, technically, you are covered because they relate to it as a Jewish cult. But in Galatia, Galatians, that wasn't the case. They said, well, no, you're not Jewish. You don't meet the criteria of being Jewish. Therefore, this still applies to you. So the church came up with a wonderful idea. What if you become Jewish? Simple as that. What if you become Jewish? Wouldn't that sort the problem? Wouldn't we then have no problem? You can then become Jewish, accept all that's been required of you, meet the criteria, and still be a Christian. In fact, this suggestion was so popular among the church that a certain group of Pharisaical Jews went to the extreme of making it a requirement. And this is where we run into the problem. Because once you make someone a requirement, it becomes a law. And that's when Paul and Barnabas ran head to head in with this argument. So that's the bit of the background theory as to what's going on. Why is that related to this concept about a plank? Well, we see that there was a small speck, a little problem that had existed, but the people who wanted to address the problem only could see one solution. It was the thing they couldn't see past: the law. And therefore they wanted to enforce the law on everyone. So it was their plank. They couldn't see by it. No, everything's sorted by the law. Everything worked out by the law. We can't avoid the law. We must do the law. And that was the problem. So they had a major plank in their way. Now, one example. Come up with your own, as you see fit, because there's thousands of them out there. And we don't have to go far to look for them. After we've dealt with this, however, Jesus is continuing on the same theme. He's not moving away from this. He wants to tell you something else. Do not give what is holy to dogs. Do not cast your pearls before swine. Because if you do, they'll trample you under their feet and turn and tear you in pieces. This is a very simple picture, and everybody from the farming background and understanding understood exactly what he was referring to here. They understood this right. I mean, one, pearls are something of great value. That's the first thing. Two, they're not food. That's the first thing. Pigs are only interested in what they can eat. Dogs are only interested in scraps of food that they can devour and enjoy. They're not interested in the holy showbread or any of these concepts. That concept doesn't apply to them. So you can't give what's holy to dogs or your pearls to the pigs. It doesn't work. Lovely pictures, but what does it mean in our present day? Well, this is where we run into a major difficulty. It simply means that you do not, are you ready for this? You do not evangelize to the masses. I know, that doesn't sound correct, does it? You say, but hang on a minute, what was the church doing? And Paul, Barnabas and Silas and all the rest of them, didn't they come out evangelizing? Well, actually, no. They went out and only went, first of all, to the synagogues. Or, in the case of one renowned city, where there was no synagogue, they met at a place where prayer was being held by Jewish people. They were going to the lost, to the people of the Jews, and subsequently the Gentiles who had been drawn by God towards that group. This is the thing that we have to understand. The Spirit has been working in preparation for the gospel to go out. But he didn't open it up to the world. He opened it up to those who could receive it. So Jesus is telling them, look, there are individuals who cannot accept this. And if you try to tell them about it, they'll turn on you. They'll rip you apart. They'll kill you. And this is what we have seen throughout history. With the best will in the world, some evangelical societies have decided to go out and sacrifice their lives into areas that had absolutely no preparation work by the Holy Spirit made for them to go into. They did the exact opposite to what Jesus is saying here. Do you hear this taught often? No. Why? Because there's another thought that we've got to take it all to the whole world. That's not what the church is to do. The church is only to work in the field God is preparing, because the Holy Spirit has got to prepare the ground. When the world is prepared, then it'll become our field. At this moment, the world's not prepared. And it's going to involve a major war between the forces of this world and the forces of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ before that ground in total be prepared. So there's a big battle ahead call them again, just to keep it a nice thing. So here Jesus is warning, telling people, look, here's what's holy, here's what's pearls, here's the things that are precious to you. Don't give them away to those who cannot benefit from them. Don't share it with those who have no purpose. So these are the sort of things that you have to take on. Immediately after he says this, right, he says, you've been trampled. He's given you some more advice. Now, this is good advice, but he's changed track here. Now, this is very, very important. We've got to listen to this. Ask. This is verse 7 of chapter 7. Ask, and it'll be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds. And to him who knocks, it will be opened to you. Jesus isn't finished there. He now wants to draw them a picture. Is there anybody among you, if your son or daughter was to ask you for bread, would you give them a stone? Or if they were to say, could I have some fish? Would you get them a serpent? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more would your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Do you believe that? That's the first question. Do you believe that? Jesus said it, but do you believe it? I know none of you would go out and gather the stones to give your children breakfast in the morning, or head off to the zoo and grab a snake or two and say, here's a wee bit of fish. You just won't do that, because you just know that would not help your children whatsoever. But at the same time, your mindset, how you think about how God responds to you, is as if God is doing that to you. And that's what Jesus wants you to hear. That's the bit he wants you to understand. If you know how to do good, understand God knows better. And when he tells you, you've asked me for something, I've heard it. If it's appropriate, you will get it. If it's not appropriate, in other words, dangerous to you, you won't get it. But I've heard you. That's the first bit you need to say. If you knock, I will open the door. Imagine a child standing outside the parent's bedroom door, knocking. What sort of parent are you if you just pull the blankets over your head and say, it'll go away in a minute? I mean, you wouldn't do it. I mean, you'd be up. You'd be wanting to find out, why? Why is this child knocking? So when do you knock? Every time you pray. Every time you feel an urgency, a fear, a problem, a difficulty, and you bring it before God, you're knocking. And he has promised, I will open the door. I will adjust to your need. I will meet you. So you see, God can do all these things. But then he goes on and says, whatever you want men to do to you, you do to them. This is a completely new concept within the law. It's not a new law, for it's always been there. But this is a different way of looking at it. The emphasis that Jesus is saying is how you want to be treated is how you treat other people. So if you want arguments, you argue with people. If you want people to like you, you like people. If you want to get tea in people's houses, you make sure they get tea in your house. The whole concept is you lead the response from them, not wait to see how they treat you. Now, in the law, it's a lot of wait to see how they treat you. You know, and if they reject you, knock off your dust of your feet and go on about your business. But Jesus is actually saying to them, look, in the case of the church, when you're dealing with people, and it's not always going to be church people, you lay the example of how you expect to be led. And don't be surprised when it doesn't respond nicely to you, but keep laying an example. Show them how it's meant to be. They see it. It's a witness to them. Jesus then moves on to say something of great importance. All of this, everything that I've been talking to so far, is in the law and the prophets. And if you're doing any of this, you will obey the law and the prophets. All of this is merely what you already know. And here's why. There is a very, very small path. There is a very, very thin gate that leads to life. In other words, you won't happily walk along, do what you want, and find it. You need specific directions to where it is. And those directions are given to us by Jesus Christ. And it is only through Jesus that we can receive eternal life. So that's why the path is so small. That's why the gate is so narrow. Because it's only through Jesus. Not knowing who he is, but obeying and listening to him. That's the difference. Jesus warned that very few people are going to find the way. So we've got to take that on board. Jesus said very few find the way. Remember, they're being led by the Holy Spirit. They're being brought to this point. And he's only talking really here at the moment to church. And yet, even within church, very few will actually surrender so completely that they hear everything Jesus says and puts it into action in their life. Very few make it. Verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Now Jesus gives us a wee picture example again. He says, do men pick grapes from thorn bushes? Well, there's loads of thorn bushes around where I live, and I tell you, I've never seen a grape in them yet. So no. Can you get figs from thistles? Again, a lot of thistles our way. No figs. So we know that if you want the good things, the grape for the wine, the figs for the food, the best that can be given to you, then you're going to have to go to the proper sources to get them, which is the Holy Spirit. But it also means that if you're meeting individuals in church, in positions of responsibility, religious sounding, religious appearing, that are not producing the wine and the food of the Spirit of God in their lives, then you know that they are not of God. You know them by their fruits. And that's the only way you can tell. You can't tell by looking at them. I mean, you say, well, that's a Bible, but how do you know that I don't actually have in here the latest novel of some writer? You don't, because there's a cover over it. And that's what they mean when they say, dressed in sheep's clothing. You don't know what the content of a person is until you see their life played out before you. Till you see how they think, how they reason, what they do, what their decisions are, how they approach things. And then you have the picture of Christ to hold it up against. Are you reflecting of him? That's the measure. We've us and we've got Christ. None of us fully reflect him. But if we're reflecting this guy down here with horns, and we're obeying the things of the world, and we're following the world's political system, and we're dependent on what the world can do with us, and we're accepting all the teachings that the world is giving us about what's happening around us, well then, we're not listening to him who made everything. We're not listening to him who's in charge of everything. And we have to tell the difference. And that's difficult at times. Every good tree bears good fruit. Bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit. And a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit will be cut down and burned. That means destroyed, finished, gone. Therefore, by their fruits you will know them. But Jesus isn't finished. He's still, remember, this is still the steak. There's a lot of information in here. This is a big meal. This last chapter is a big meal all by itself. I mean, you're going to not get up from this table, you're going to roll from this table because there's no other way to move. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. You see, here we have a problem. We accept what people tell us. We accept what we see. And if we see people doing good things, we automatically assume, well, they're good people. And we're not expert enough, we don't have a discerning palate, if you like, to determine if the food that is being seen, the fruit in their life that we're seeing, is actually right and proper and good for us, or if it's a little bit off. We can't tell the difference. We don't know. Now, we're not talking about ravenous wolves here. We're talking about deceptive teachings. With the best will in the world, Jesus is referring back to the very first part of this chapter where he's talking about somebody with a thing in his eye. With the best will in the world, you could be receiving incorrect information. And you need to know. Now, the information won't necessarily be wrong. It's just not palatable. It could upset your tummy. It's slightly off. And that's what he's saying here. And so he's saying to them, look, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom, but he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. But here's the sting. Many will come to me in that day. Now, this is the day of the Lord when everything's been sorted out, okay? Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name? can we highlight that these individuals are not wolf in sheep clothing? These are Christians who have a beam in their eye. There's a difference. And they are standing before God, and they are given a defense for what they did to serve him. We prophesied in your name. We cast out demons in your name. We've done many wonders in your name. That, healing, all the rest of these miraculous signs and wonders that they would have performed. All of these things were done. But yet Jesus is going to look at them squarely in the face and tell them a reality. You never done it for me. You did it for you. I never knew you. You are not of me because you practiced lawlessness. Now, sometimes when we read this, we miss the point. We go back and think, is he talking to Moses? No, he's not. He's talking about, did they listen and put into action exactly what Jesus said? Or did they follow their own little agenda, believing that maybe he meant this or he meant that? Or did they listen to him and him alone? That's the difference. And in many liberal Christian societies, we have this problem where alterations are made because we live in a different age than what it was 2,000 years ago. It was a different mindset. They had a different way of looking at things. We're to look at it from Jesus' point of view. Because he's not looking at it from a viewpoint of 2,000 years ago. He's looking at it at a viewpoint of eternity. Always present. Never changing. And to help them understand this, Jesus wants to finish his lesson to them, this meal that he's prepared for them, with a very simple little image. Whoever hears these things of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who's built his house on a rock. The rains descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, but it didn't fall, for it's founded on the rock. But whoever hears these words of mine and does not do them, remember, throughout this whole thing I've emphasized, it's what Jesus says is what we should hear and do. If you don't, then Jesus says you're like a foolish man. You've built a house, just like the other man did, but your foundation is sand. And the rain, same rain, will descend. The same floods will come upon you. The same winds will blow on your house. And it'll fall. And great will be that fall. And so when Jesus had finished these sayings, the people were astonished, because he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. And that ends chapter 7, and it also ends this series of discussion. But I want you to understand, it's very important. As Christians, Jesus is the first, the second, the third, and the fourth voice that we listen to. Nobody else. Only Jesus. Thank you.